Well, welcome along to another video where we are focusing on a themed month of programming, and it's all about what landlords should be focusing on in 2018. And I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Johnson, MD of Shawbrook Bank, for this interview. And Stephen, I think we can certainly say that, 2018, there's going to be many challenges. It's going to be very volatile, and none of us have a crystal ball, so it's hard for landlords to plan in those circumstances, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but I think there are, clearly some themes, I guess, and I would just offer my opinion, probably from a more financing point of view, really, about what those themes should be and what landlords should be thinking about. So, yeah, do you want me to go? Should we go? Yeah, so I guess the first thing that I would say is be realistic on your environment, and it's something I would have said before in some of the things we've done, but just being realistic about the costs that are really involved in running your portfolio. Now, we're starting to enter the period of rates going up, so that's a big driver of cost. Obviously, at the end of the month, we're going to have people starting to see the impacts of Section 24 and the tax relief changes. So, first bit of advice, be realistic on costs and be prudent on costs.
Can I just jump in there, Stephen? What sort of contingency do you think landlords should hold in terms of perhaps a cash fund?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on the relative size of various different people's portfolios. But I guess the theme that I would say is you need to build yourself in some good contingency, some good headroom, and just don't maximise, don't push yourself to the limit. That's always what I see, and there's always a choice for landlords, I think, about growth. Let's go faster, let's maximise the opportunity. But I guess I would always say to people, look, that's just a very risky strategy, and never push yourself to that limit, because things will happen that you don't predict. And if you're at the very edge of what you can do and afford, then you're going to feel that very keenly. You need to give yourself room, and that's really the one key lesson from financing a portfolio, really. So that's my first point. I guess.
Be realistic, I like that. So second one?
Second one, I would say, is yield. So be yield.
Hungry.
Yeah. I guess I might borrow my first one. Be yield realistic. So you need to be very cognizant of yield, because if your costs are going up, you can only do so much to manage your costs. Therefore, you've got to try and manage your income, and yield is clearly what's going to drive your income. So yes, and obviously finding ways to maximise the income from your portfolio, maybe remixing it and disposing of some lower yielding and replacing some higher yielding. But my one point that I would really want to stress on this is people need to realise that higher yielding assets are higher yielding for a reason, because they're riskier. And we have seen a material shift in geography and how investors are investing in parts of regions and countries and property types because they're, I believe, intoxicated by the yield, and they need to understand the risks of that yield. And I think there's evidence of savvy local investors selling poorer parts of their portfolio to non-local investors who are just attracted by the yield. So think about your yield, maximize your yield, but ask yourself, what other risks are you introducing with that yield strategy?
I think that's a very good point, because I suspect that a lot of less experienced landlords are attracted up north for yields, but they don't understand the tenant demographic, the social issues, etc., etc. And I think you're absolutely right that they need to be going up there in person, walking the streets, talking to local lettings agents, and making sure they fully understand what they're getting into. Yeah,
you've got to do your due diligence, and I do worry that if that doesn't get done, you need to know your local market whenever you're investing, and that's, I think, a heightened risk. With the yield focus, you introduce regional risk, and you introduce possibly asset, property type risk, because you start doing HMOs or multi-units and you don't really understand what's involved. So be alive to what risk you introduce. And then my third thing is sort of legacy, really. I think some landlords will have different legacy issues to deal with that are going to start to now come to fruition. Higher levered landlords are going to find the impact of Section 24 really impactful, really quite challenging to their business, and it may well prevent them doing other things. So you've got to understand your legacy, because it hasn't all hit you yet, but there's enough information out there now to understand what your legacy is going to look like, and therefore act on it. because you can act on it. I mean, if you look at the research, principally about the changing tax relief and the cost, people are saying, I'm going to put up rents, I might sell some property, or I'm going to incorporate. So there are options. You can't always put up your rent, though, because the local market might not wear it. So, but the first thing to do as a landlord is know your legacy, I think, and then take steps to address it rather than wait for it to come up and cause an even bigger problem. Yes. So that'll be my third point.
Well, I have to say, absolutely brilliant input. Thank you so much, Stephen. And we just want to draw your attention to the many educational resources that Shawbrook Bank have for landlords. It's a key focus for you, isn't it, to be part of the educational process. You've got some fantastic videos on your channel, case studies, things that will help landlords learn, inspire them, and that's something you're going to continue to do into 2018.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, I don't think I don't think it's very often we talk about our products. We try and talk about the market because, you know, we're one participant in a big market, a very healthy market, and, you know, I definitely, you know, we'd like to add as much value as we can with our insight. We don't know it all by any stretch, but I guess we always have a bit of an insight from a financing perspective, and yeah, we're always keen to share those inputs, and hopefully, you know, people will respect those opinions, and that'll stand us in good stead as well.
Fantastic. So the 3 key points we said were be realistic, be yield realistic, and start thinking about your legacy. Brilliant stuff, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining me here on Property Tribes TV, as always.
Pleasure.